This tutorial is going to teach you how to make this blossom embroidery. So we're going to start by grabbing some green thread and we're going to unwind it from our plastic bobbin. And just take as much as you're comfortable using. So if you've never done embroidery before, just start with a little bit. So unwrap it from the plastic and then you can go ahead and cut off a piece with your scissors. Then we're going to pick up one end of the thread and we're going to tie a knot on one end. So to tie a knot, you're going to take the tail and you're going to wrap it around two of your fingers like this, and it makes this little loop. Then you're going to stick that tail through the loop and pull it tight, and that makes a knot. Then you're going to grab the other end of the thread, and on the other end we're going to thread our needle. So it helps if you lick the ends of the thread, and then you can kind of pinch the ends together, and this will make it easier to get the thread through the eye of the needle. And then you'll just pull your needle down so you've got this little extra tail of thread so that your needle doesn't come unthreaded. So now you're ready to start embroidering the piece. So go ahead and pick up your fabric and your embroidery hoop. And we're going to start by grabbing our thread and needle. We're going to start by bringing the thread up from underneath the fabric. And you always want to start on the underside of the fabric because this is going to hide your knot on the back side. And then you're going to bring the needle back down into the fabric, creating your first stitch. You can start anywhere you want. This is where I decided to start. So again, you're going to bring your needle up from underneath, and then you're going to stitch back so that it's touching that first stitch. And this is how your stitches are going to connect each time. So each time you bring your needle up, you're skipping a little space, and then you come back to touch the stitch in front of it. So it's called a back stitch because you're kind of stitching backwards. You go up ahead underneath like this, and then you bring your needle forward so it's going towards the previous stitch you already made. And you're just going to keep doing the same thing all the way around the line. So you're going to bring your needle up from underneath, and then you're going to stitch back so that it's touching that previous stitch, and pull your needle all the way through. Again, you're going to skip ahead a little space from underneath, bring your needle up, pull it all the way through, and then you're going to go back and touch where that previous stitch ended. And you're just going to keep doing this until you've done all of the leaves, and then you'll use the same stitch for the rest of the flower as well. And then for the middle of this leaf, you're just going to do the same thing. So you're going to do one stitch forward, bring your needle up from underneath, and then stitch forward. Each stitch is about 1 centimeter long. Pull your needle all the way through, and then you're going to skip ahead underneath, leaving a little space. You're going to bring your needle up, and then you're going to go back and touch that previous stitch. And you want to make sure your stitches are touching every time. This is going to create a continuous line. So always make sure you go back and touch the previous stitch. And you're just going to keep doing the same stitch until you've completed all of the leaves. So I'm using the light green thread here to do all the leaves. And then once we're done with the leaves, we'll move on to the next part of the flower. So I've gone around and I've done all the leaves. I'm just finishing up my last stitch here. So I'm bringing the needle up from underneath. And then I'm going to finish it off just by connecting this last stitch. And then I'll show you how to tie your thread on the back so that it doesn't come undone. So pull your thread all the way through, and then let's flip the hoop over and I'll show you how to tie it off. So you're going to find a stitch that's close by, like this one here, and you're going to slide your needle underneath that stitch. You're not going through the fabric, you're just sliding it under the stitch. And you're going to pull it, but not all the way. See this little loop that's forming? you're going to stick your needle through that loop and then pull it tight. And that makes the first part of a knot. You're going to do it one more time. So you're going to slide your needle underneath that same stitch. And here you're going to pull it through and let this little loop form. So don't pull it all the way yet. Make a loop and then stick your needle through that loop and pull it tight. If you do that twice, it will make a knot. And you can go ahead and cut that tail of thread off with your scissors. So as you're working, you might notice that your fabric is getting kind of loose. So you kind of just can tug on the edges like this to firm up the fabric again. It makes it a lot easier to stitch. Okay, so now we're ready for our next color. We are going to grab our dark green thread and we're going to do the little leaves on this hoop. So go ahead and unwrap some thread from your plastic bobbin. Take as much as you're comfortable using. You won't need that much because these leaves are pretty small and there's only a few of them. Grab your scissors and cut off a piece of thread. And then we are going to tie a knot on one end of the thread. So remember, to do this, you're going to take the tail, you're going to wrap it around your two fingers like this, making a loop. Then you're going to take that tail and stick it through that loop and pull it tight, and that will make a knot. Okay, so we got our knot on one end, and we are going to thread our needle on the other end. So it helps if you lick the ends of the thread, and then you can kind of use your fingers to pinch the thread together on the ends to stick it through the eye of the needle. And then pull your needle down, leaving a little tail there so that it doesn't come unthreaded. And then we're going to embroider these leaves for the next part. So you're just going to do the same thing we did for the other leaves. You're just going to bring your needle up from underneath and it's going to hide that knot on the back. Then you're going to stitch back one, and you're just going to keep doing this. So you're going to bring your needle up, leaving a little space between the previous stitch. And then you're going to go back and touch that previous stitch. And you're just going to do this until you've outlined the leaves. So if you need to, go ahead and pause this video so you can catch up. We're going to go ahead and finish these green leaves, and then we'll work on the next part of the flower. Okay, so we finished up the leaves. The next part we're going to work on is the center of the flower. So we're going to use our brown thread for this. You can unwrap some of the thread and cut off a piece you're comfortable using. You don't need that much, you're just doing a little circle in the center. So unwind some thread and then grab your scissors and cut that piece off. And then you're going to tie a knot on one end of the thread and thread your needle on the other end. So if you need a reminder for how to tie a knot at the end, you're going to take the tail and you're going to wrap it around your two fingers, making a loop. And you're going to stick that tail through the loop and pull it tight, and that will make a knot. Okay, so you've got your knot on one end, and then on the other end of the thread, we are going to thread our needle. So lick the ends if you need to, pinch them together, and then stick your thread through the eye of the needle. Then bring your needle up from underneath so that the knot is hidden on the back side. Pull your needle all the way through, and you're just working in a circle this time. So you're going to stitch forward, and then you're going to bring your needle up from underneath, leaving a little space. Pull your needle all the way through, and then go back and touch that previous stitch so that they're connecting and there's no spaces between it. And just keep doing this until you've gone all the way around the circle. Okay, so I'm just finishing up this last stitch here for the center of the flower, and then I will show you how to tie it off again on the back. So pull your needle all the way through, and then go ahead and flip your hoop over, And you're going to remember, you're going to slide your needle underneath a stitch that's close by. Don't go through the fabric, just go under the thread. And here's this little loop. You're going to stick your needle through that loop and pull it tight. And then you're going to do it one more time. Slide your needle underneath the same stitch. And then stick your needle through this loop. Okay, so stick your needle through that loop. And then we're going to pull it tight. And if you do that twice, it makes a knot. So now we can tie that off, or cut that off, and we don't have to worry about the thread coming out because we've got it tied off. And now we're ready for the last part of our flower, which is the yellow thread. So I'm all ready to go with my yellow thread. I tied a knot on one end and I threaded my needle on the other. So I'm ready to start stitching. And so I'm just going to work petal by petal with this flower. I'll start with over here with this petal, and you're just going to do the exact same stitch. It's called a back stitch. You're going to do one stitch about 1 centimeter long, and you're going to go forward a little bit, leaving a little space, and go back and touch that previous stitch. And this is the same stitch we've been doing for this entire flower, so you'll be a pro by now. So you're going to go ahead and do all of the flower petals, then you'll tie it off on the back when you're done. So I finished all my flower petals. I'm just going to tie the thread off on the back. So I'm going to slide my needle underneath a stitch that's close by, pull my needle through, and here's a little loop. And stick my needle through that loop and pull it tight. And then I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm going to slide my needle underneath that same stitch. And then let that little loop form, stick my needle through that loop and pull it tight. And that's it. I'm going to trim off the extra thread, and then I am done with this embroidery hoop, so I'll be able to do the back of the hoop next, which there's another tutorial you can look at in your instructions for your Kiddie Kit for how to do the back of the hoop. Thanks so much for stitching with me today. Grab your next Kiddie Kit at threadunravel.com.